Hello, everyone. Hello, thank you for joining us today for this municipal case study webinar. It's really a pleasure for us to be given the opportunity to showcase our collaboration with the City of Toronto, Civic Lab, TO, and eCampus Ontario, and share with you how we were able to support this broad initiative that led to more than 60 research projects between the City of Toronto in collaboration with 8 higher education institutions in Ontario. Now, as we maybe give it a few more seconds for people to join the call, I thought I'd share with you a little bit about the image that you're seeing on the cover page here. For anyone familiar with Montreal, you will have recognized Habitat 67. It's a housing complex just south of downtown Montreal. The complex was designed by Israeli-Canadian architect Moshe Safdie and originated in his master's thesis at the School of Architecture at McGill University. And an amended version was improved and built a little bit later on for Expo 67, the World Fair that was held in Montreal that summer. We felt this image was evocative of successful collaborations between academia and a municipality. So moving right along, as you may have seen from the cover page, we're going to be running a few polls today using Slido. For anyone not familiar with Slido, there are 3 ways for you to participate in the poll. Option 1, I haven't checked, but I believe my colleague will have shared the link to the poll in the chat section. Your other option is to scan the QR code using your camera. A link will be provided. You can click that link and the poll mechanism will appear on your phone. And option 3, of course, is to go to slido.com and enter code 3285441. So hopefully you've got that working, and we're going to repeat these instructions on every poll page as we move forward. Okay, so now that Slido is all set up, let's move forward for just a few more housekeeping notes. The event is being recorded, and the recording will be shared afterwards. As mentioned, polls are run using Slido. The image you're seeing there will be shared on every Slido poll page. If you have any questions, please use the Zoom chat, and we will answer questions after the panel discussion. And any questions asked in French will be translated, and as I said, answered during the Q&A. And finally, yes, these slides will be shared with everyone who registered for this event after the event. So, okay, I think we're almost ready to go. Probably got a full house now that we've got all Slido set up. And to give latecomers a little bit more time to join, we thought we would run a first poll, also to test your Slido mechanism, by asking you where you are tuning in from. And as we launch this poll, already open, gee, that was fast. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that I'm located on unceded Indigenous lands at the foot of cold and freezing Mont Royal today in Gay or Montreal. The mountain's imposing presence in the center of the island with views of the river and majestic forests made it a choice location and a gathering place for Indigenous peoples who were traveling through the region thousands of years ago. Today, Gay is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. We respect the continued connections with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationship with Indigenous and other peoples in the Montreal community. Nancy?
I'm honored to live and work on the traditional territories of the Ojibwe people of Fort William First Nation, who are signatories to the Robinson Superior Treaty of 1850. This land is watched over by Nanabijou, who is turned to stone and lays in Lake Superior, protecting his gift of silver to the people.
Excellent. Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Nancy. As you're guessing and seeing, this webinar is being run in English, but I will be sharing the French version of these slides after the webinar. Okay, thank you everyone for answering the poll. Just a quick agenda. We'll begin with a short overview and background information on Mitacs, and we'll share some information about our support for municipalities and what we bring to the table. We'll outline a few examples to give you a sense what you can actually do with Mitacs funding, but quickly enough, we'll jump right into the panel discussion on the Toronto collaboration platform. So without further ado, we're truly delighted to have with us today my colleague Tash, who has kindly agreed to give you some background on Mitacs and to contextualize this webinar. Tash Ismail Saville is the Chief Business Development Officer at Mitacs, working towards building and connecting knowledge networks to drive innovation with impact nationally and in Canada and internationally. Previously, she served as the VP of Innovation Consulting at Mars Discovery District in Toronto, where she designed strategies and solutions for partners across various innovation and impact-related themes. Prior to that, Tash was the Chief Executive of Youth Employment Services in South Africa, where she created over 70,000 work opportunities for youth and established partnerships with key stakeholders. She's published articles and case studies on corporate innovation, change management, and inclusive innovation, and has taught at business schools on 4 continents. Tash, all yours.
Thank you, JP. Lovely to be here today. Very excited to see the spread of participants from coast to coast, which is, of course, where Mitacs operates. We're a national, independent, not-for-profit organization with business development teams located across the country in all 10 provinces and in the Yukon. And our job is to drive innovation. We eat, breathe, sleep, and continuously think about innovation at Mitacs. What is very exciting about today is we are interested in this nexus, in this point between academia, society, industry, not-for-profits, and we work at this nexus point to drive innovation, accelerate innovation inside of our partners. This municipal call that we're doing right now, this webinar, is very exciting because when we look at the needs that society has around innovation, municipalities are really at the coalface of needing to drive so much around climate change, around protecting communities, around the health of communities, infrastructure. They really are a critical point in this ecosystem. And so very excited that the team are having the session today where we're able to work with municipalities and drive a lot more of this, this type of innovation. So how does Mitacs work? Our teams on the ground go out to partner organizations, understand the needs that they have on the innovation spectrum, and then the team goes out and finds academic expertise that matches this need, connects the two, and the magic happens at our partners. Really some game changer, world changing type innovations that come through these partnerships. And that is what innovation is all about. Connecting the right people, which is why webinars like this are so important. We hope that a whole lot of new connections and sparks fly, that it's catalyzed through this type of forum. And please be in touch with our teams if you want to drive any of these projects forward. So we are able to do what we do because we have a network of partners, industry, NGOs, and municipalities. We have funding from the federal government, which we're able to apply to these projects. And then importantly, across the country, you see that we're supported by provinces, and we have this blended model that allows us to leverage federal and provincial dollars to be able to have the sort of impact that we want in market and in our communities. So with that, I'll hand it back to you, JP. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Tash. Appreciate. So Tash has given you a lot of information there. I'll add just a little bit more. We've been doing this for 23 years. It's quite an undertaking at Mitacs. We've funded over that period over 50,000 projects, some big, some small, working with every university and many colleges across Canada during that time. We're a team of 115 advisors on the ground who are really looking forward to working with you to help you understand the programs. And we have really offices all across Canada. So just a few words about this this webinar, where this fits. This webinar is one in a series that we're running this year on models of municipal innovation. Our objective really with these webinars is to showcase key projects through firsthand testimonies from actual stakeholders that hopefully will illustrate the various ways or the models in which our partners were able to benefit from what Mitacs has to offer. Our wish for this webinar is that you will come away with a sense of how municipalities or other partner organizations can establish a more systemic approach to innovation in collaboration with academia to solve your most pressing challenges and to develop innovative practices. This webinar is the third. We hope you'll find it useful, and we hope to offer you more in the future. So Tash has covered a lot of what we're hoping to do with municipalities, and seeing the numbers of registrations today from academia. I'm sure many of you will already know quite a lot about Mitacs, but perhaps not everyone will know that our programs have recently opened to municipalities, recognizing that municipalities are faced with increasingly complex challenges, namely due to the COVID. Municipal organizations and hospitals, for that matter, have just become admissible to our programs. In just 2 years, we've seen over 275 projects submitted by 140 municipalities. Most of those projects were small projects, arguably municipalities running 1 or 2 projects during that time, but it's very impressive. Quite a growth and an uptake on programs. And many of those projects were focused on sustainability, environment, or climate change. Now, before we dive just a little bit more into Mitacs, we don't want to bore you with too many details, but before we do that, we'd like your assistance to help us better understand how we can serve municipalities better in the future. And for this, we're going to be running 2 more quick polls. On this next one, and I'll just open the poll right now, we'd like for you to share maybe your thoughts on what you feel are the main challenges that municipalities face. This is a multiple choice question, and it might be hard to just pick one. That's why you can pick many. So it's absolutely possible. And there are a lot of choices. Please don't overthink it. And hopefully this is going to help us in the future design programs that really better cater to municipalities. Certainly many topics are in the news this past little while. Housing is a big one. Transportation, certainly there, and public safety seems to be also very much at the forefront of cities. We'll just let this one go for a little bit because I think it's really interesting, and we're looking for ways in the future to run maybe thematic calls. So we would be keen on getting a sense on what would be the most compelling themes to choose for those calls. Just give it a few more moments. Fortunately, the call is going to close as soon as I move to the next slide, so maybe just another 10 seconds or so. Again, you can see the instructions on the left-hand side. You can just scan that image, log into slido.com, enter that code, and you should be ready to go. All right, numbers are pretty steady. Housing, homelessness is the big one. Yeah, certainly. All right, thank you so very much for that. And we're going to quickly move to a second poll. What are the main hurdles preventing cities from innovating? And I'm going to open this one up right now. So here we go for that second one. If there's something important you feel is missing among these hurdles, please do feel free to let me know about it. We'd love to again maybe use this information to improve our programs and better serve our municipal partners in the future. So we do look forward to getting your feedback on this one. I believe there is an other than there that is clickable. Also something you can click. I'd really be keen on knowing what that is. If you feel like providing that immediate feedback in the chat box, I'd really like to hear a little bit more about that as well. All right, we're going to give this one just maybe another 30 seconds or so. Limited budgets. Absolutely. I guess that's a big part of why we're here and why we're hoping to be able to offer support. Risk averseness certainly is a big one. Bit of a new thing, even for us at Mitacs. Working with municipalities is a new thing. So still a little bit discovering on how to best address municipal concerns, improving processes, improving the way we send invoices, those kinds of things. All right, we'll give it 10 seconds and then I'm going to move to the other slide. What have we got here for other support leadership of the province? There's that. But the time that people can get to undertake these initiatives. Think about the impact of new innovations. How can we think about the impact of new innovations if we're unaware of them, or the impact on our businesses? Absolutely. Yeah, lack of access to actual new technologies is certainly one, but also to the more recent researches. Professors are dying to connect with municipalities. That's a hard one, right? Getting that two-way connection happening. All right, so I think we're gonna move to the next slide. Thank you very much for your feedback. That's very much appreciated. So just a few words, of course, about how Mitacs can help. Where we'll just go over a few slides to just tell you a little bit about Mitacs for anyone who might not know. In short, Mitacs is two big things. First, we offer funding. It's a flexible funding system that's really designed to support collaborative innovation, or open innovation, if you like. So let's be clear on that. We offer grants, but secondly, perhaps more importantly, we facilitate connections with academia. We can help municipalities get in touch. So going over that question there about how can we know that these things exist, we try to do those things. We try certainly to make that connection with academia. Doing the opposite correction is going to be a little bit more challenging, but we can recommend experts. We can advise you on what's an eligible project and what's not. Basically, we know a lot about colleges and universities, and we try to make that conversation a little bit more simple for you to break down those barriers. And we do so all across Canada. I'd say that perhaps is our biggest strength. Okay, so now quickly, let's move quickly to the actual funding model. So that's where it gets a little bit interesting. So simply said, our grants cover half the cost of a project. The municipality or any other partner organization, private company, nonprofit, needs to cover the other half. Funding is structured in segments or modules of 4 to 6 months. One module requires one municipality, one professor, and one more key component, an intern. The intern must spend about 50% of their time with the municipality. And the minimum investment from a municipality to get this going, to get one of these projects going, at least to get Mitacs support, is an investment of about $5,000. You can go much bigger. The average project value, at least for municipal projects, is roughly $30,000 for maybe 1 or 2, sometimes 3 modules of funding. We've seen much larger projects, but on the average with municipalities so far, we're looking at a 1 year maybe project with 1 or 2 students. But these they can span multiple years with multiple interns and multiple universities, if you so like. And really, these projects are meant to be hands-on. They're meant to be projects where the intern interacts directly with the municipality. It's an incredible opportunity for interns to gain valuable experience, but mainly for Mitacs, having been doing this now for over 23 years, we believe it's one of the best ways that we have found for these projects to be truly successful and to have an impact. And now let's look at what you can do with these programs. Simply said, there are 2 big things you can do. You can fund innovation or not so complex projects, or you can fund applied research, typically a little bit more complex. Innovation projects will be something that maybe you'd like to explore, something you'd like to test or to optimize, perhaps a software to improve efficiency, or a process to implement, something to report, to pilot, a special project, let's call it this way, but not necessarily something that's overly complex. If we look at applied research, that's the one you'd want to use for more complex projects. Those are typically the ones where you can't Google the answer. The answer is not there. You need more. You need data. You need knowledge. We think of those as projects that keep you up at night. That's just keep you from sleeping. Projects for which there's no easy solution. Those harder problems. So those are really the ones that would be good candidates for the applied research stream. But not to worry, we'll help you figure it out. That's why we're there. That's why there's a team of advisors across Canada, and we really help you understand and be part of that conversation with colleges and universities. And we'll go into a few examples in just a moment, but just quickly to address the other question that we're often asked, like, where do I start? How does it work? Who does what? So this illustration gives you a bit of a sense for what very often happens. It's not mandatory, but things often unfold this way. Firstly, we sit down with you. We help you determine your understand the project, advise on whether we feel that that's an admissible project for the kind of funding that we have available at Mitacs. And if it's not, we'll tell you right away, and we'll try to work with you, of course, to help you maybe find that portion of your project that might be admissible at Mitacs. But if not, we have a lot of our partnerships with other organizations, and we'll be glad to refer you to other funding agencies if need be. But next, and that's where perhaps the most important role that we play comes into play, is that we help you find a suitable academic team. Again, not mandatory. If you've got a research team you're working with, and by all means, you can go and work with these people. If not, we can simplify things and really help you make that connection. Typically, after that, you'll be engaging in conversation with a research team. You'll meet the potential intern. You'll have a say. This is really meant to be a mutually beneficial project, but it's, first and foremost, it's a project that's being initiated by you. Then a typical would be drafted. Very often those proposals, a proposal would be drafted, and usually those are drafted by the research team. The project would be sent out for evaluation. Some are evaluated externally, others are evaluated internally. You do have to factor in evaluation delay of anywhere between a month and a half to 2 months and a half, sometimes 3 months, all depending on complexity of the project. During that time, we'll invoice the municipality, funds will come to us. Once the project is approved and funds have arrived, then we can send funds to the university. And the university will be responsible for paying their interns. Okay, now let's look at a few statistics and examples, just a few stats that we thought might be of interest, maybe more so for, I was going to say academics in the room, but just about for anyone. On the left-hand side, you're seeing the disciplines that in which these projects were conducted. Obviously, social sciences plays a very big role in many projects, more, quite a large number. And on the right-hand side, you can see a surprisingly broad range of sectors where projects were conducted. And as mentioned in our introduction, many are related to the environment or climate change and policy. So finally, maybe before we enter into the panel discussion, I thought I'd share 3 more quick slides on previous models. So the researcher in residence model innovation was the topic of our previous webinar. It's really an initiative that was put in place between the city of Kamloops and Thompson Rivers University. It's actually ongoing, that I think they're in their 3rd year right now. It's an initiative where the city became a living lab to study community engaged research. The short-term goals were really to test and document best practices in community university research engagement for more participative and inclusive policy development. And the long-term goal was really that of systems change to develop a long-term sustainable relationship with a positive impact. This next project I thought would be of interest. It was in the news just recently. It describes how student Mohammed Abdullahi, a student from Trent University, interviewed various municipalities to learn about how they're assessing the climate impact of their programs. So using this knowledge, Mohammed was able to work with the city of Peterborough to advance their innovation activities in addressing climate change. And finally, before we get the panel going, I thought I'd share just a few more examples that illustrate different ways in which our programs are being used by our partner organizations. So going clockwise from the top left, the Halifax Regional Municipality addressed key uncertainties regarding urban forestry, which led to improved decision-making capacity. So this was really about building decision-making capacity. On the top right, the Pontiac MRC, or regional district, wanted to explore how to solve labor shortages via a pilot project for the resettlement and support of immigrant families. On the bottom right, the Durham Regional Municipality evaluated a micro homes pilot. And lastly, bottom left, Calgary Economic Development looked at ways to understand the inclusiveness of its labor market. Now, that's pretty much the end of my segment, but as you see, some of these projects are good examples of what are sometimes smaller, maybe one-off initiatives that we see a lot at Mitacs, and those are very much at the core of what we do. It's absolutely possible to submit a very small project at Mitacs, and we'll be very happy to fund it. We love those. But for this webinar, we wanted to actually show you that it's possible to actually partner with Mitacs. So we go beyond just being a program that you come to and get money from. You can partner with us in a more systemic way on initiatives that are often longer term and are more involved and thought out. On this note, before we move to the panel and before I pass it to my colleague Nancy, we'd like to run one last poll and ask you whether you've participated in an academic municipal collaboration before. And as we open this poll and keep it open for a few moments, I would like to introduce my esteemed colleague, Nancy Cummings, who is part of our team of advisors in Ontario, who's taken part in organizing this webinar and who will be moderating the panel discussion today. Nancy, à toi de jouer. Over to you.
Thanks, JP. And thank you to everyone for being here today and joining us for this conversation. So as Jean-Philippe mentioned, I'm the Mitacs Business Development Advisor supporting the Toronto Collaboration Platform Project, otherwise known as the TOSIP project. And joining me today to discuss how TOSIP came to be, how it's evolved, the lessons learned, and the successes of this project are our panelists. First up, we have Jennifer Gordon, who is the Director of Humber College Center for Creative Business Innovation and the Director of Humber Galleries. Jennifer holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Drawing and Painting and a Bachelor of Education in Intermediate Secondary Visual Arts and English, both from the University of Ottawa. Currently, she's a Master of Fine Arts candidate in the University of British Columbia, and she's an advocate for sustainable growth in the Canadian arts and culture sectors and has held roles in business development, training, and administration, as well as consulting. From the City of Toronto, we have Jeff Moore, who is a partnership advisor in the Strategic Partnerships Office. He and his team work to advance multi-partner initiatives to an array of special projects across the city. He played a pivotal role in both the evolution of City of Toronto's Donate TO portal and in the launch of the Civic Lab TO initiative. This initiative works to bring academics, students, and city staff together to support data-driven approaches to public policy and program development. Chris Theophilogenakis is a partnerships and policy advisor in the Strategic Partnerships Office at the City of Toronto. He earned his PhD in history from the University of California, San Diego, and his research was in colonialism's cultural legacies and the human consequences of exploiting people and lands. He's worked in both the public and private sectors to develop and implement arts, cultural, and heritage programs that share Toronto's diverse cultures and stories. And in 2021, he joined the Strategic Partnerships Office, where he continues this work by supporting strategic relationships and collaborations between the City of Toronto and post-secondary institutions. From eCampus, we have Robert Luke, who is the executive officer, or chief executive officer, I should say, of eCampus. eCampus Ontario provides leadership to Ontario's Indigenous institutes, universities, and colleges, promoting digital by design education, collaboration, and innovation. eCampus Ontario helps to inform and shape Ontario's post-secondary education system in consultation with sector stakeholders. Prior to his role at eCampus Ontario, Dr. Luke spent 10 years in executive management as the Vice President of Research and Innovation at George Brown College and OCAD University. His expertise is in human-centered knowledge media design and working at the intersection of education and information science to produce a useful and usable technology to support education, health, and innovation systems. Also from eCampus Ontario, we have Emily Tamfo. Emily is the Senior Manager, Platform and Product Development at eCampus, and she currently leads 2 of eCampus's platforms. First is the Ontario Exchange, which connects academic institutions with instructional designers. And she also leads the Ontario Collaboration Innovation Platform, or OSIP, which launched in December of 2022 and is the natural outgrowth and evolution of the TOSIP project. OSIP aims to create research and development partnerships between academic institutions and Ontario businesses. Prior to working at eCampus, she led Ontario.ca as the Senior Project Manager at the Ontario Digital Service. And last but not least, we have Iman Yahi, who is the Director on the Mitacs Business Development team that heads up our major accounts team. He received his bachelor's and master's degrees both in electrical engineering in Tehran, Iran. In 2007, he moved to Canada to start a PhD at electrical engineering at the University of Manitoba. and he later joined the Center for Chemical Innovation in Solar Fuels at Caltech as a research collaborator. He's also completed a postdoctoral fellowship studying CMOS-compatible dynamic memory structures based on conducting polymer systems. But since 2013, Iman has been a part of the Mitacs team. He's worked in different regions, including Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Ontario, to foster collaborations between the private sector and academia. I'd like to say once again, thank you to all of our panelists for taking time to join us today, and let's dive right into things. So TOSIP has many players. There's the City of Toronto, eCampus Ontario, higher education institutes, and Mitacs. But really at the core of this is the Civic Lab TO initiative. Jeff, can you give us just a little bit of a brief history on Civic Lab TO and how it came to be?
Happy to, and thank you. Firstly, seeing as I work in partnerships, I'd like to recognize and thank all the partners involved in Civic Lab TO. So Centennial College, George Brown College, Humber College, OCAD University, Seneca College, Toronto Metropolitan University, University of Toronto, and Mitacs and eCampus Ontario, who are such a big part of today, obviously, and of our various partnership initiatives. Now, about the partnership broadly, Civic Lab TO is a brand, a program, as you mentioned, and as he intended to create a more systematic approach to collaboration between the city and its 8 university and college partners, those being our higher education institution or HEI partners. I'm sure I'll drop into that acronym now and then, to work collaboratively on research projects, program innovation, and the development of solutions to complex city challenges. I feel, though, it's important to note some key cogs outside of Civic Lab TO, some foundational elements or framework that set the stage for Civic Lab TO, namely that we've collectively established an academic partners working group featuring government relations and president office leads from each partner HEI and city staff. So through regular meetings, it's the forum to channel strategic conversations on mutual areas of interest, for example, student housing or alignment on pandemic reopening plans, climate action strategies, and we meet quarterly. There are agreements with each HEI facilitating student placements. Now, that's a legal human resources matter outside of our purview, but certainly in the spirit and aligned with Civic Lab TO. There are also partnership MOUs with each academic partner, formalizing the spirit and elements of our collaborations, including Civic Lab TO. So to come back to the question, those MOUs outline the commitment to Civic Lab TO as a program, and this program includes several pillars, including, the Civic Lab TO Summit, so a biannual event that brings together partner faculty, staff, students, city staff, government, community representatives to outline opportunities and identify specific pathways for collaboration. We had our inaugural summit in 2021, and we're planning with George Brown College and TMU for our next summit this fall. There's a Civic Lab TO curriculum, an undergraduate course shared by all 8 partners, focused on municipal governance. So we work with a group of instructors to develop a course built around city priorities. So 6 sessions each fall, bringing students together from all institutions into council chamber to hear from the likes of the city manager, the chief city planner, et cetera, on their work, what it is, how it helps, how they can get engaged moving forward. Really rewarding being involved in that. Civic Lab TO collaborations is another pillar, and that's in reference to connecting city priorities and staff to partner-led forums and events focused on mutual priorities. If they need and want a city speaker involved, we can help facilitate that. And of course, Civic Lab TO research, which brings us here today, and more to come on that for sure. But with all that said, some background on how this came to be. And there were many HEI presidents, staff, city councilors, and city staff who championed this before my time, including Deputy Mayor McKelvey. But I'd summarize it as follows. A staff report in 2015 recognized the importance and potential of working together and outlines a commitment to exploring a collaboration model. And that was referred to as towns and gallons at the time. Following that, there was a meeting of the HEI presidents and the city manager to affirm commitment. That led to the signing of the partnership MOUs in 2017, 2018 that I referenced. The academic partner working group meetings began during that time. In 2020, we saw the announcement of Civic Lab TO, that name, that brand in which all partners were committed to the initiative, and the city dedicated resources, staff to it. And we saw also the initial efforts to formalize research needs intake, share those with all of our 8 partners, arrive at a template research agreement. That all happened in 2020. But in 2021 was the true launch of Civic Lab TO and its various elements, including the Toronto Collaboration Platform. So, we've come a long way, and we at the city are very proud of it. I think a key output of all this are the processes, the structures, the mechanisms inherent in it to steer those partnerships, where to propose an idea, the forum for strategic discussions, et cetera. But I also want to note that it's a work in progress. We're still growing, and many facets, as mentioned, are not even 2 years old yet. But very proud of where we've come, and very proud of and enjoyed very much working with all of you on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for providing that context. And it's a much deeper history than I realized there. I didn't realize quite how long that had been in progress. I'm impressed at how far it's come. So before we kind of move into what TOSIP actually has done, I would like to maybe ask Robert and Chris and Aman, can you tell me a little bit about how the TOSIP project started and how that format's evolved over the years? Because I know what it looks like now is not what it looked like a couple of years ago when it started.
It's very true, Nancy. Thank you very much, and thanks everybody for joining us. And thanks, Chris, for the context of Civic Lab TO. We're eCampus Ontario is really pleased to be able to support Civic Lab TO. I think take a page from what Jeff was saying. The history of what we've done is longer than you might expect. May of 2019 was the first time that the higher education institutions in Ontario thought that we might be able to work together to foster a more cohesive approach to research partnerships. There was an event convened by Colleges Ontario, Council of Ontario Universities, and the Council of Academic Hospitals of Ontario, which basically said, can we find a way to work with multiple partners together because we provide complementary expertise? That was happening in parallel to a lot of the work that Jeff was talking about at the city, when the City of Toronto was looking to find a way to streamline the way it formed partnerships with the 8 colleges and universities that are in the Greater Toronto Area, or GTA. And when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, that academic working group kind of morphed into I think it was the Mayor's Task Force for Getting Stuff Done. I don't think that's what it was really called, but that's what it was. Manjeet Jita was the director in the partnerships with the city manager's office at the time, and she presented to the academic group the idea that the city had very real challenges to deal with as COVID was emerging, as everybody will remember. And is there a way that we could rapidly source expertise from the experts in the 4 colleges and 4 universities in the GTA? 6 of those 8 were already working together on this partnership model. So it was an easy thing to say, oh yes, we think we can do this. So that's actually where the mechanisms of partnership evolved. And I'll say a couple of things about what were really important about that. The first one was everybody was really unified behind helping to support the urgent and emergent addressing of key issues facing everybody early in the pandemic. And the second was commensurate with that, the desire for people and institutions to find ways to break down silos and work rapidly together. And I would say that that is the hallmark for what the platform that we've built now to support municipalities and businesses to partner with higher education institutions, is that we're trying to, where possible, reduce as much friction as we can to enable people to readily articulate what their innovation challenge is so that an expert can respond to it. So it's a demand-driven innovation model. But to answer your question specifically for how it evolved, it literally started with the, I would say with the telephone. I feel like I'm talking about the rotary telephone in some respects. That the first round. So first of all, we didn't have a software platform, but we was a platform of agreement for all 8 colleges and universities to use one set of agreements with the City of Toronto, one contract, one IP agreement, one project plan. That was table stakes. We had, Iman was at the table then with Mitacs. We also had NSERC. We had the Ontario Centres of Innovation. We had NRC IRAP at the table, SOCIP. We had a bunch of people who were there who were willing to work together to find a way to streamline the development of an innovation challenge and let multiple pathways to funding emerge. Now, it just so happens that Mitacs is the only funder that can fund municipal projects. So, well, that and the fact that Iman is a rock star, but he's the one who really stepped up with the city to ensure that these projects got off the ground, got funded. But we started with a phone call. We used Zoom. Actually, it wasn't Zoom. It was the one the city uses, like Zoom.
WebEx.
No, was it WebEx? It might have been WebEx. Yeah, it was a quaint platform. And we basically did like an open call. We had a bunch of city departments who had been canvassed by the folks in the city manager's office. Do you have a challenge? Do you have a problem that you want to deal with? And we just cycled through them. It took us 2 calls of maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours each. And each institution of the 8 institutions said, yes, I've got somebody who's probably interested in that, or I am interested in that. And from that, we bundled up the projects. We facilitated the project leads with project plans. Those were fast-tracked into the Mitacs applications, and we flowed the funding onto them. Those first 8 projects, actually, you can see, I think they're on the Civic Lab website, but they're also on this website. I'll just put this in the chat here. And it's really important actually to take a look at those, because they're a really interesting moment in time, right? The association between socio-demographic characteristics and COVID-19 incidence and severity, supply chain disruption for PPE procurement, low-cost contamination of disposable N95 masks, a telework study. Who knew that this thing called the internet would be so useful and usable for events such as this? And my personal kind of favorite is innovations in tax filing, because if you're a city and taxation is your primary source of revenue, and suddenly that is potentially disrupted by the pandemic, it's pretty important to figure out how we're going to enable people to file their taxes on time to keep the wheels of society moving, etc. So I think, those projects are really interesting snapshot in time. Fast forward from that into year 2, we did the second cycle of projects. We had a rudimentary MVP software that enabled collaborations. And now in year 3, where we're standing up the next round of funding, we have a completely AI-enabled platform that enables folks to define what their innovation challenge is, get matched to a potential partner in their area, their higher education institutions. In this case, Mitacs is the funder, so we'll be flowing funding onto them. But if you have other funding needs, as was mentioned by Jean-Philippe at the beginning, the system will also reference you to other funding opportunities as well. So that, in a nutshell, is how we got to where we are.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like the necessity being the mother of invention sort of thing happened.
Well, I'm reminded of the saying of Homi K. Bhabha, noted post-colonial theorist, who said, always the state of emergency is a state of emergence. And I was really impressed with the way everybody came together from the city, from the 8 institutions, from the 4, 5, 6 funders that we had together, who said, you know what, we don't know what's coming down through that gate, but we're stronger if we stand together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for giving a bit of history on that. And when thinking about this matching platform, Chris, maybe you can speak a little bit to what the benefits of having that kind of a matching platform has been for the city.
Sure. There are many benefits. I don't know if we have time to go through all of them, but some of the, I guess, ones that I would like to highlight for everyone is that it really added to the city's research and innovation infrastructure. Just from working on this project, on this program, one of the things that was useful for us when we're doing these projects is that academic institutions have their own research and innovation offices, which have the resources required to kind of facilitate research. Municipalities often don't have that specific office. So I think having a matching platform really allows us to, one, streamline the process when we get research requests. And on the other hand, it offers a new stream for students to come into the city and to gain experiential learning opportunities. One of the things that has happened over time is that we've moved away from having unpaid internships to having models of paying students to gain experience. And I think that this platform and kind of the networks that are established through this really helps in that regard and helps us kind of transition into this new landscape for students. The platform also, I think what's important is that it offers opportunities for shorter duration and low cost forms of engagement with academia. Not to say that we can engage in these larger full collaborations for original research, which does happen, but now for cities, the practitioners, when they have to collect data very quickly to inform staffing reports, this is an opportunity for them to reach out, quickly put in their submission, hear back, and it really streamlines that whole process for them. For practitioners, it's also a way to pair municipalities with student needs and student interests. And on the other hand, it provides researchers with insight into what the divisional priorities are in the city and a better understanding of local public administration. It supports, the platform itself supports the creation of a network for innovation. It brings together kind of these, as I mentioned before, these resources that are oftentimes lacking, which can include, time, the capacity to do this work, and also funding. And really, it again, the important part here is that it's streamlining the ability for the city to provide opportunities for, I guess, information sharing. There's professional support through this network, specifically around kind of Mitacs staff and kind of the business development team there, eCampus and their staff and their networking, funding, which is really, really important, kind of getting that matching funding and best practices as well, helping staff navigate, we mentioned this, the legal and the HR issues. I found that was a huge benefit. So I guess, yeah, I'll leave it at that just for time's sake. But I guess one more thing, actually, I want to mention, because it relates to the previous question about the evolution of the platform. It's not only an important platform for matching projects, for matching funding, but it's also an important project management, I think, platform. And I see that as kind of the next step, is to help municipalities and this network to track the projects and to use it as a tool for evaluation, to help us track the trends in research, the trends in the city's priorities, the number of student placements. Helps us to evaluate maybe equity and inclusion in the participation of the types of research or the students that are applying. So it's an important platform, and again, seeing it evolve into this greater tool to support us is great to see.
Thanks so much. And I'd love to get a little bit of a view from the other side of things. Jennifer, from the academic side, how has TOSEP helped to facilitate new relationships, or has it strengthened any existing ones for you? What was your experience like from the other side of that platform?
It was honestly, it was a lot of fun. And I can recall, being between A and B, being on the phone with this whole big group of folks. And it was sort of like Dr. Luke was saying, it was a bit of a round robin. It was like, you bidding yes, you bidding no, who's bidding on what project, what do we have, going from there. But overall, I can't speak highly enough about it, because it very much expanded my research network in an incredible way. The efficiency that comes with that, and with having these relationships now with all these folks that are on the call here with me, but out broadly beyond that, the interdisciplinary nature that I can, if I'm looking at my bailiwick is generally within cultural industries, right? So if I'm looking at taxation within cultural industries, well, I know now who I can go to at various institutions for something like that, which I would never have had those connections with before, to be totally honest with you. So I think for the municipal people on the call, a lot of you will be familiar with the term sort of creative placemaking. And I think for me, what this has done, and the way that I view the platforms that have come out of and the projects that we've completed together via Civic Lab and TOSEP, it's almost like what's been created here is a research placemaking, right? So that everyone you know where to go to either find collaborators, to find problems, to find partners, to find your way through with funding, and it's a beautiful nexus to be part of.
Well, thanks so much. Yeah, that's always been the goal of Mitacs, is to create those relationships. And we were really happy to be able to create this kind of a network that integrated so many higher education institutes and connected them to the city. But with a relationship with this many players, it is always really complicated. And I'm wondering if maybe Robert and Iman, if you can speak to some of the hurdles that had to be overcome when you were developing this.
I'll start and then turn it over to Iman, because I suspect he's got a lot more to say about this. I would say, the biggest hurdle here was getting everybody to agree to use the same agreement, right? Like, everybody's got their own legal counsel, everybody's got their own way of doing things. But at the end of the day, you need a project, you need a partner, you need a funder, and you want to manage that. And what I think the signal achievement that we were able to do as a group is to say, look, there's got to be a way we can do this once. Like, there's no way that we can have the city source a project and have to use 8 different agreements to do this. Like, that's not going to work at scale. And I think because of the particular conditions, first of all, there was the precondition of everything that happened before the pandemic. As both Jeff and I had described, there was a lot of work underway for the city to stand up MOUs with all of the higher education institutions, the collaboration platform that was already being designed. So we had a runway to getting that done, and the particular conditions, that state of emergency that we were all in was truly the state of emergence, where we all said, okay, yes, we can do this. Actually, that form that Jennifer designed over at Humber College over there, that's actually really good. In fact, it's better than mine. And so I'm going to use it as well. But Iman, I'm really keen to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely. Well, Robert is always a tough act to follow. I have to state that for sure. So to first and foremost echo what Robert mentioned, in the initiation of these sort of partnerships, when we have multiple partners involved and all sort of focusing on working with a particular quote unquote industry partner, in this particular case, a municipality, coming to an agreement on following the similar sort of arrangements in terms of contracting, research agreements, IP policies is always a major hurdle. Thankfully, in this particular case, thanks to Robert and his team's great work at eCampus Ontario, we didn't really have to do much on that front, except we would have basically, as usual, bring in the Mitacs force behind it to support those discussions as well. I mean, building on the relationship that we have built over the years at Mitacs, using the Mitacs officers on the ground, it was rather an easy and natural and organic thing for us to do. But beyond that, again, given just a range of these partnerships that we're looking at here. I was just going through the list of projects that we have supported over the past couple of years and seeing just the dazzling range of these projects from institutions and also the nature of the activities. It's inevitable to see that we face a range of issues in terms of sourcing the right intern and the right student and keeping them engaged. There have been issues on that front. On that basically area, what Mitacs has done, which is part of our core services, is to mobilizing our forces on the ground, essentially our boots on the ground, as my colleague Tosh mentioned. They have been playing a pivotal role in supporting these engagements when things haven't gone right at a project level. I'd like to think that they've been quick to respond and address that, intern replacement, delays in basically funding flows, and constantly looking for areas of streamlining and improving over the time. And I'm more than happy to talk about it. I know that's one of the upcoming topics in our discussion point, but echoing what both Robert and yourself, Nancy, and also Chris mentioned, first of all, when there is a will, there is a way. I think this partnership was a prime example of that everybody was rallying behind the same cause and we all wanted to make it happen. That was really important. And then also to what Chris mentioned, streamlining. Over time, we have witnessed all these issues, and then in response, we have created ways to further streamline access to innovation and then lower the barriers to that access. MOUs and all the things that I'm going to be talking about in the following items are just one examples of those. So that's where I'm going to stop. Hopefully I was able to touch some of those areas.
I wonder, like, I'd love to hear from Emily, because Emily is our leader on this project, and maybe you can comment, Emily, on some of the ongoing, like Iman, you just did a great job of it's a steeplechase, like we're like literally we're running a hurdle. But Emily, what's your sense of the hurdles that we're overcoming and how and why?
You took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to ask Emily that.
Yeah, thanks everyone. So in terms of hurdles previously, I think, Robert, you touched on the biggest one, which was kind of getting these distinct institutions to sign on to the single research agreement. And getting that many organizations to agree to the same terms is incredibly difficult, as everyone can imagine. I'm sure many people on this call have had that experience. But on from a larger perspective, it's a testament to the willingness and commitment to this kind of work from everyone involved. However, from a product and program development perspective, we always knew that this collaboration was a pilot for a rollout of a similar model for the whole province. So in terms of hurdles, I would say one of my biggest personally was assessing and balancing the needs of each organization and each type of institution and evaluating how to address their needs and their pain points in a way that could translate to larger demographics. As we all know, each institution works so differently, and depending on the time of year or political climate at the time, for example, some of their priorities could often conflict. So learning about those needs and understanding them was an obstacle and will continue to be an obstacle, of course, as we're working with different types of institutions. But it's also a solid learning experience for myself, for the team, for everyone involved. The first and second iterations of this program were done almost entirely manually. And as we've evolved, we're moving on to what it is now, which is an online platform called OSIP. So now that we've actually created a platform that automates some of the workflows and addresses some of those pain points directly, our next step, and which will be an ongoing hurdle, but also a great learning experience for us, is to ensure that the needs of our partners are addressed in the most user-friendly and intuitive way so that there are fewer hurdles for anyone trying to engage in this kind of collaboration.
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to get to see the OSIP platform, and it's an exciting platform to see develop. Circling back to those MOUs, Iman, since you've dealt with multiple different types of organizations, from for-profits, not-for-profits, municipalities, Mitacs, higher education institutes, I wonder if you could just give us a little bit of what the benefits to having MOUs in place are when you're trying to build these kind of collaborative projects.
Absolutely. So the genesis of the MOUs, as I tried to mention, is essentially a response on the part of Mitacs to further streamline these activities, essentially. As a funding program, our funding model sort of dictates a specific flow of cash from the partners through Mitacs, and then going to the academic institution, individual academic institutions as individual research grants. Inherently, this process involves delays. Accounting basically issues might arise in the process. So very quickly learning that in dealing with multiple institutions in this particular partnership, TOSIP in particular involved 8 academic institutions in GTA, and projects will just basically happening all across with a even the spread of projects, and oftentimes we had projects where involved multiple academics basically institutes. So we had to absorb the contribution from the city, any campus in some cases, and then separate them and distribute them and manage them between the 2 organizations. So one benefit that this MOUs can bring to the table is that after building a range of relationships and going through the whole process once, as Emily mentioned, it was sort of a learning exercise as well, and a pathway to this OSIP platform. We basically discussed the possibility of the city and eCampus parking a portion of the R&D support that had been earmarked to support these activities in the future year at Mitacs. So there is that capability that Mitacs offers to our partners. By way of this capability, we essentially absorb their contributions towards these projects ahead of time. We earmark that for a range of partnerships that are going to happen in the future, and we basically keep it in secure accounts for basically the use in the future. And then moving forward, it will become basically a financial and accounting assignment, which reduces significantly the whole process of invoicing at a project level and flow of funds at every single case, but rather just receiving the applications, approving them, and then immediately the funding will be at hand to be dispersed to academic institutions. So that was yet another area of a streamlining that Mitacs basically exercised in this particular case. And we are hoping to look into renewing these arrangements and expanding it in the years to come to support even more projects with these partners.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Having everything in place before you even start launching projects just makes it so much quicker. And because collaboration is the foundation of this whole type of project, what have been the importance of these kind of partnerships, and how have we worked as a collaborative group to foster them? I'm going to direct this first to Emily, and then maybe Jeff, and then Robert and Chris, if there's anything that they missed, if you want to hop in.
Sure. So I would say for me, I think the importance of these partnerships is just to set an example for others that they are possible. I think that academic and municipal or government institutions can be quite intimidating to anyone. And so I think there are silos and ivory towers on both sides. So I think the most important piece for me has been creating these collaborations and creating programs and services like this that can set a precedent so that these silos don't have to exist, and that collaboration is not only possible but also welcomed on both sides.
Thank you. And Jeff?
Hi there. Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to note kind of the human factor here. It's fostered by all of the work behind the scenes, the template research agreement that has been mentioned a couple of times, the development of the platform, the prep in launching and socializing the platform, because we need to tell people about it and raise awareness about it within the institutions. The stewardship of the matches. Once the platform indicates that there is a potential match, there is still quite a bit of work and that human touch involved in fostering those relationships, answering questions. So I think it's important to point out kind of the human resources and human side to fostering these relationships.
Yeah, that's a great point. Having that personal touch really makes it a relationship as opposed to just a transactional sort of thing.
That's right. And actually, one more point along those lines, just the relationships that have been built because of this work, that we know you and you know us now, and the group that has been assembled for this call, we know one another, and we can reach out, and there isn't that kind of that barrier or that unknown. So it's been great.
Yeah, it takes a lot of the unknown and scare out of things.
Mm-hmm.
Chris or Robert, is there anything that you would like to add to that?
Well, maybe I'll add something that Chris mentioned, which was the importance of project management, and the thing that Jeff just mentioned and Emily inferred, which is keeping the humans in the loop. innovation is inherently a social activity. It requires us to know people. And even though we've built this system, we were funded by the Ministry of Colleges and Universities here in Ontario to build this system that is designed to enable more and better research partnerships for all of the Indigenous institutes, colleges, and universities in Ontario. It's a computer system that's AI enabled, but there's always a human in the loop. And that's really important because the technologies are useful, but in order to make them truly usable, we need to ensure that there is a foundation of a relationship between organizations and between people. But I'm going to complicate that a bit because people leave positions, jobs, they move on, they go to other places. And what's important here when you're dealing with large institutions like universities, colleges, and city governments is that the relationships that these entities have are entity-based, not necessarily people-based. They are based in the relationships that people have, but if somebody gets a new job assignment or they move on to another role, we want to make sure that there's still connective tissue between the in this case, the City of Toronto and the 8 institutions that are supporting it. And so by building on the relationships factor, the human factor that Jeff mentioned, and building systems like OSIP, TOSIP, that are designed to reduce friction and streamline processes, we're better in position to enable like a more resilient connection between the governments and the 8 colleges and universities in the Greater Toronto Area. And I think the last thing I'll mention before I turn it over to Chris is the role that students play in this, because they are the ones that are doing the bulk of the work here under faculty supervision. And when those students or learners are working with city officials and working with the professoriate and the colleges and the universities, they too are assuming this or learning innovation skills and practical skills related to the problems that they are solving that day, but they're also learning about the importance of people-centered innovation.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And Chris, I'm going to tack on to what the importance of partnerships and how they've been fostered for you, and just add, what do you think some of the biggest successes have been in this project as well?
Yes, so I guess to the first one, and I guess it's related, I can speak to one of the things that the importance of these partnerships and the platform is transparency, in that the city is now able to broaden its scope of who it shares kind of these projects with. What we found in kind of the early discussions was, sometimes divisions were, reaching out to the same academic partners, just because maybe they had a relationship there. There was some comfort that they've worked together in the past. Where under this platform, divisions now can put out these challenges and then receive these expressions of interest from all institutions in the city. And this allows city staff to broaden their their scopes for collaborations. It allows for more, you can, inter-department collaborations, institutional collaborations, interdivisional collaborations, which I think is a huge benefit to the city, but also to the academic partners. Right, it's not only the city that is going to be exposed to, these different institutions, this different research, different resources, but it's also, our academic partners who might stumble upon a research project that might relate to their work that they didn't know about. And I guess the other question was successes. I can speak to one I think benefit here is, and it speaks to the popularity or the maybe how far the reach of Civic Lab TO and the platform is within the city, is that most recently we had one city division, the climate and the environment and climate division, come to Civic Lab TO with funds to support research projects that addressed the city's climate challenges. So they came to the table with $1 million from the city for over 2 years to support research projects. And they had this kind of fund already in place, but they didn't have the mechanisms to solicit projects, to set up challenges. And it so happens that, in this whole process, we set up Civic Lab TO, and they came to us and said, hey, can we leverage the work that you're doing? And we obviously, supportive of it. So it's great that we are, reaching out to the right people. We're getting divisions to buy into the program. They're seeing the benefits of the program. The $1 million here is going to be, matched. So you can imagine, how much more we can get out of kind of the research and innovation for the city. So it's I can just mention that as being one of the important successes, right, of the platform and of the network.
Yeah, we see that a lot. We kind of refer to it as the snowball effect, where you have one person that loops in on a project and then it just sort of gets bigger and bigger as word of mouth spreads. It's incredible to hear about those innovation projects coming out of the city. I'm wondering, maybe Emily, you can speak to some of the successes that eCampus Ontario has seen with this.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I would say from the project perspective, I like to call them successes or highlights of the project are definitely just seeing the actual deliverables that these collaborations create. So for example, the city and actually Jennifer's team at Humber did an amazing job delivering a project on building cultural sustainability, specifically for arts organizations. And there were very clear recommendations on how to address a problem and a plan for how to roll it out. And for me, those are highlights and successes of this kind of work, because they demonstrate the potential for these kinds of collaborations to make real world impact and change for sure. Aside from that, as I mentioned, TOSIP in general is the pilot and the model for a larger platform called OSIP. And so it has been, I like to call it a success, because it has demonstrated to me the best ways to facilitate collaboration between these kinds of organizations, as has been mentioned. So I think those two things, are the biggest successes of the work so far.
Yeah, those are great. Seeing the impacts that come out is one of the biggest joys of working at Mitacs, getting to see those things that happen at the end and knowing that what you've done has made a difference out in the world.
Exactly.
And just want to touch on, Jennifer, could you talk a little bit about what the collaborations, like how they've made an impact on you, or if they've changed anything about the way that you look at research or how you approach research?
They absolutely have. When I answered the previous question, I was talking about bringing a network together and having a nexus and sort of one common sort of research placemaking. And I would say the other side of that benefit that I wasn't even expecting to get from it is that once you're inside that network, you can see this whole list of these other projects that are going on. You see the scope of things, and you can see where you fit holistically within your municipality, within your research networks, within this, for example, within Civic Lab TO, various pieces that way. So to see those horizons on those on those pieces, and to have that holistic overview, it's very inspiring, and it takes away the feeling of isolation that can sometimes happen when you're working in a specific line of a very specific type of research, right? And those silos that inherently come out of that. It feels very much community-based. And as I said, if I'm looking at taxation and how those pieces are going out and how much money is flowing from A to B or something like that, and we're taking a look at, well, how can we switch up the granting processes for various pieces this way and that way? So it just opens a realms of possibility that for anyone who's curious minded, it's quite validating. Not to mention that, once you've had the validation and you've completed the project, the whole setup is there for the support for scaling that out and scaling it up, which is it's game changing for sure.
And I didn't prep you for this one, but I'm wondering if you could maybe speak about some of the effects or impacts it's had on your interns, because I know that you work directly with the students. What have you seen come out of those sorts of relationships and how it's affected them? Well, both of them. One has gone on to is in the process of getting a globally based master's program focused around tourism and culture, and the other. And within that, I would say that she is now sitting, like we are sitting as global experts on accessibility and sustainability for space with cultural organizations within municipalities leveraging HEI space and services and pieces that way. We did a global survey of what was out there, and that has she's cutting leading edge. She knows what's happening in the States. She knows what's happened or could happen in Canada. She knows what's happened in Europe and different pieces there. So to have those students sitting on the edge of that leading edge of knowledge on those ways is it's astounding, and it's changed their academic careers, and it's changed the positioning of where they're going. And it's opened up new research projects as well. Like, for example, we were also looking at accessibility within the cultural industries, but then it was like, what does the term accessibility even mean? So everyone says accessibility, everyone says innovation, and they mean very different things by it. So I was like, okay, let's go back in and we're going to categorize what this means. What are the various types of accessibility? And then how do we have a matrix for setting them up? And you know, the other student who was working in support of this was setting up that side of that sort of wicked problem of how do you address the training or the access and for all of these pieces. So once again, that's another piece of I would say globally leading research that's happened there, and has now I would consider we have now 2 projects, right? At least that we'd be able to go forward with from here. Yeah, and really creating those downstream impacts where the people who've had their horizons broadened or been on that leading edge of research can now go out and their new research can have more impact. Absolutely. And they've now got relationships with, you know, with people in Mitacs and with the city and with, you know, eCampus Ontario, and just it's a different set of connections and experiences that I think was going to be very, very beneficial for our municipalities moving forward, for sure. So with that, I wonder if you could just very quickly speak to what recommendations you would give to academics who want to build partnerships. And then once you've answered that, Jeff or Chris, if you could talk to the recommendations that you would give to municipalities, that would be great. Tolerate the awkward. Things are always awkward in the beginning. It's a little muddy and you're trying to find your way through it. It's well worth tolerating that awkward phase to get to the other side with this. And the phase isn't even that awkward because we have like a whole template here for you, right? Like a whole system in a lot of ways that can be scaled up, scaled out, scaled nationally, municipally, the whole range is there. So, you know, I can't think of any more risk-averse institutions than municipalities and higher education institutions. Like, I think both sides of those houses are equally risk-averse in what it is that they're how they're operating. So it's not like these are deeply validated partners and deeply valued partners on both sides of those houses. It's yeah, like I said, just getting through that awkward, okay, how do we do this? How do we get into it? Get that flow going between the two sides, and then you're off to the races. Jeff?
Certainly. Yeah, I can speak to awkward phases, no problem there. But I actually was thinking along the same lines that you know, you need to recognize that with institutions of this size, there will always be side conversations not captured by the formal channels that we've set up, or misses, but there's a commitment to work together and work through things, that you will be heard and that there will be action. I think that's key, that we have built that infrastructure and continue to foster that understanding. And to that end, I think it's important to communicate, to meet regularly, to share objectives, build those channels and processes for continued communication. There's always bumps in the road. It's not a perfect system, but the core, the underlining thing is the commitment to communicate.
In the interest of time, I'm going to wrap up the panel here, and I would thank all of our panelists so much for coming. And I would just like to open the floor for about the next 5 minutes to see if there's any questions. And if you want to raise your hand, we can do questions that way. They can be directed at any of the panelists.
Thank you, Nancy. I haven't seen actually too many questions in the panel. This gives maybe a few more seconds if anyone wants to come on live as well or ask any questions in the chat box. There were a few about the platform, about what's possible, about whether or not projects were there, and those were mostly answered in the chat section. One last one was about whether or not the findings and the reports of completed projects are shared and can be publicly accessed. I can't speak so much about the TOCP or OSIP platform. As far as Mitacs goes, we usually publish a friendly description of the project on the website, but we don't ourselves publish the results of projects. But however, we would be happy to connect you with the professors who conducted those projects, which and we leave it up to them to, or the partners of the project, to determine whether or not they'd like to share their results. Robert, on your side?
I would just say, I mean, we do the same thing. Obviously, Civic Lab TO has a basic description of the website, of the projects on the website, and we do on our OSIP site as well. It's not providing like a super detailed description at this time, but I know in talking with Jeff and Chris and others that we're continually interested in telling the story about what we have accomplished here and what we continue to learn from each other and how we are supporting the city to solve real innovation challenges in concert with the best and brightest minds in the professoriate and the learner communities in the 8 colleges and universities, enabled by Mitacs, the innovation sponsorship agency of record in Canada. And I would just say, if you are sitting there in a higher education institution or in a municipality or in a business, and you're thinking, gee, I should probably do some of this innovation stuff of which I've heard, you need to call somebody at Mitacs today, because they will help you. Their job is to help you solve your challenge by finding an expert. And I can think of no better experts to do that than the good people from Mitacs that you have here today, and everybody who I've met from Mitacs over my academic career. And I think I would just, if I can, make a shameless plug for, I think, the single biggest value to what we have achieved here as a community, as an innovation community here in the buzzing metropolis of Toronto, is that we have enabled not only to solve key and urgent innovation challenges, as we've heard mentioned, but we've done so by mobilizing learners. And I mentioned this already, and I think Chris did as well, but to me, that's one of the biggest outputs and outcomes of what we've been able to achieve here. The Honorable David Johnson, former Governor General of Canada, once said the best tech transfer technology there is a pair of sneakers. And what he meant by that was the shoes. Maybe you're Adidas fan like me, maybe you're Nike fan, it doesn't matter. The point is, when you put on a pair of shoes and you put somebody in an innovation context, they are able to go elsewhere and continue to innovate. And I think that is the real power of what we've been able to achieve here. Solving innovation challenges, enabling by the great people over at Mitacs, and giving the learners who are working on these projects valuable innovation literacy that will continue to pay dividends, not just in the municipalities that they've lived and worked in during the project, but wherever they live in Canada after that.
Thank you.
We have one question that's come up in the chat. John is asking, what is the applicability of this platform model for working with small rural municipalities with very few financial resources across all sectors? And that's a really great point. There's a lot of rural municipalities that struggle with innovation just simply because of a lack of resources. So if any of our panelists would like to tackle that.
I'll start because I'll say this thing called the internet is incredibly useful and usable, and it doesn't matter where you are. So we support all of Ontario. All colleges, universities, and Indigenous institutes are available on OSIP platform. And Mitacs is the funder of record, is the only funder that we've got that funds innovation in this country right now. So I would say the applicability is actually pretty good, provided you're currently in Ontario.
And I've got one that I think I'm going to direct towards Aman, because there's a question here about whether there has been any case study of having a group of students in projects as opposed to one or two in smaller groups.
In terms of programmatic limitations, we can definitely support cohort style projects with a group of students working on them. If the question is directly around projects we have supported with TOSIP, I can probably recall at least a couple of them, where not only there were more than one individual student, but was more than one individual academic institution involved in one single project. So I invite whomever is asking this question to connect with us so we can brainstorm if what they have in mind is sort of a class of students or a cohort of students to join forces on a particular project. There might be avenues to support that under Mitacs Accelerate Cluster model, for example. But certainly there is a possibility of doing that under Mitacs programming as well.
Thank you so much. And in the interest of time, I think we're going to wrap up the panel discussion questions, and I'm going to hand it back to Jean-Philippe to close us out.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you, Nancy. Can we ask all panelists maybe to just turn on their cameras for one last shot so we get a sense for all of us together, which is really great. Incroyable. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking part in the panel today. This is really, really much appreciated. Okay, so I guess that we could be done here. It's 2:28. I thought I would share maybe just a few more slides to give you our contact information. Let me just see if I can do that. I should be sharing my screen right now. So essentially, hold on a second. Apologies for that. Just finding my way back to my screen. These are some of the opportunities and the programs that you'll find on our website. The Accelerate and Elevate programs are designed to support applied research initiatives. Mitacs Business Strategy supports innovation initiatives. We do have one-offs, special programs like Scotiabank Economic Resilience Fund. Unfortunately, the deadline for that one is tomorrow, so obviously too late to apply. But if you register to the newsletter, you might have a chance in the future of being informed. This was a great initiative designed to support, obviously, economic resilience projects, which was a cost share with Scotiabank. So Scotia covered half the cost of a municipality. So maybe for those smaller municipalities that have little funding or less funding, that might be an opportunity. So in summary, thank you so much. As you've heard, these collaborations are really a great way to support evidence-based decision making. We're a great team. There's expertise all across Canada. We can do this. We can help you connect, and we'll really be happy to work with you to drive municipal innovation. Here's a little bit of information. You can find a lot of our past projects on the internet right now, mitacs.ca/projects. If you go to municipality support, again, on the Mitacs website, you can tell us a little bit about your challenge. Hopefully, you can, we'll work with you to help you find academic expertise. You've got Nancy's contact information and mine. And finally, a big thank you